Welcome, friends, to the Campus Ministry Day podcast, sponsored by VS Students. I am your host, Clayton Bullion, as well as Steve Shadrack, but Shad is MIA today. And so while the cat's away, the mice will play. But we've got a very special guest who I'll let introduce herself in a second. But first off, we just want to say thank you for joining us on this podcast. You guys have a lot going on, a lot of things to do. But thank you for prioritizing evangelism, disciple making, mission mobilization on the college campus. We want to serve you any way we can. And so today we have a very special guest. As you may be joining us, we are in the process of kind of working through our keynote speakers at EDM. You're going to hear them from stage, but we wanted to kind of get to know them off stage. And so today we have a very special guest, Shannon Compere. Shannon, introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. I'm Shannon Compere, as you said, and I work with Cru. I actually have worked with Cru for several years now. Graduated at 10. No, I've been working with Cru for about a little over 30 years now. And I serve as a campus ministry executive director. So my husband and I live in Orlando, Florida. It's where our headquarters with Cru is located. But our hearts are in Texas, and so much so that they're in Texas.
Yeah.
We named our dog Texas. So it's our way to go home to Texas every day. So
there we go. Well, Shannon, we're grateful here. And as a fellow Texan living in the diaspora, I'm grateful to see you and know you. And we could talk about good Mexican food and queso, but that's going to be a different podcast, I imagine. So I just moved to Arkansas, and one of the fun things is my son, who's a freshman in Arkansas, has plugged into Cru at U of A. And so Tim and Sam, and they're doing a great job. But as I've gotten to know some of the students, they talk about, the University of Arkansas Cru, and then they also talk about Big C Cru. Big C Cru, that all that is, and you lead that, the campus ministry as executive director. So you've kind of been in Cru a while. You've seen campus ministry on a local set, a regional setting in Texas, and now kind of where you're at in Orlando. But take us back. Who are you as a freshman? Tell us about little 18-year-old Shannon landing on her campus. What were you like?
Oh, sure. So I actually went to Ball State University, which is in Indiana. And when I thought about entering college, I saw freedom, just freedom to make my own choices, freedom to do what I wanted to do. God was not on that list of things that I wanted to experience in college. And I would say I was incredibly insecure. I wanted to kind of find the place where I would fit in. And I was incredibly lost. And what I love is that a student, her name was Carolyn. We became friends, and I ended up at a Cru meeting, what I thought was our weekly meeting. I got in the room, and right as I'm talking, I'm like, this is not like the weekly meeting that I heard people talking about. And all of a sudden, the chairs went in a circle, and I was as far away from the door as possible. And I realized it's their weekly prayer meeting. I totally freaked out. Like, I was just kind of like, oh my word, what have I gotten myself into? And my sister was actually a believer and involved with Cru too. And I think she saw the panic in me, and she looked at me and she goes, you can just sit there. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to sit here.
For sure, I'm going to just sit here.
And so I sat there, and I kind of had like one eye open watching this group of students. And tell you what I experienced in that moment was some genuineness, some authenticity, and this God that these students were praying to. I thought, this is not the image of the God I have. And I thought, okay, there's something here. There was something that was attractive, because what I had experienced a lot of Christianity was a lot of hypocrisy. And so that was my view of Christians, but there was something different happening in that room. And so actually, Carolyn, that I mentioned earlier, she and I became friends, and she shared the gospel with me. So here's a student sharing with a student the gospel. And, I was embarrassed to tell her I didn't know God. And so I was like, oh yeah, I've made that decision. And so I took the little booklet back to my room, that she had given to me that explained the gospel, and I read back through it, and I was like, for the first time, I understood what it really meant to have a personal relationship with God, and I thought, "I want this. This is what I want. If this is what I'm experiencing from these students, I want this." So, in my little room on Riverside Drive at Ball State University, I said yes to Jesus, and so the Shannon that entered college and my goals of making a lot of money and finding that freedom, I actually found freedom in Christ. And it really changed the trajectory of my college years, but more than that, it changed the trajectory of my life. And so I am so grateful for a student that was willing to share the gospel with me, because it makes a difference in my life even today.
Yeah, of course. And so she gave you, was it knowing God personally, four spiritual laws?
Four spiritual laws at the time, so that dates me a little bit, but yes, it was the four spiritual laws.
But isn't that amazing? Because when a freshman lands on our campus, um, I mean, I think that's why you and I got involved in this, and everybody's listening. We get involved because the potential of an 18-year-old where the gospel intersects their lives, and God uses something as simple and as nerve wracking as a prayer meeting. It's not what's your outreach strategy. We're going to do prayer meetings and invite law students, but it's that authenticity of of a real God encountering real people encountering a real God. That's amazing.
What was really neat was, part of the prayer meeting, they because it was the first week of campus, and those students were praying for the incoming freshmen, and I was sitting there thinking, "They're praying for me." I mean, they're not using my name, but just to think of an
Right.
incoming freshman, but that they had a heart for reaching that freshman class, and so that even had an impact on me at that moment as I sat in that room.
Oh my goodness. And so graduate from Ball State, hop on staff with Cru. And so you served at USC, right? University of South Carolina.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah,
Okay.
gotta make sure
Go
which
go Gamecocks.
USC. Yes, the Gamecocks. So that was
All
my
right.
first assignment was at the University of South Carolina.
Okay. And then served, I think, in East Tennessee and all the, by the way, this bio is online. I haven't stalked you. But just thinking through that, like, so you served in on a support staff role, lead role, and then regional in Texas, and now HQ in Orlando is not a college campus. It's an office building with an IT department, recording rooms, and all those different things that we don't have on local campus. What what do you miss about the local campus?
What I miss are the students. I, just absolutely love the hearts of students. I love their desire, whether they're a believer or non-believer, just kind of the wrestlings that they have in life and the questions that they have. But as you start to put the gospel before students and watching them open to Jesus, and as they come to the Lord and start learning how to walk with the Lord, there's something about that changed life of a student when they're captivated for Christ. I watch the difference that they can make for the kingdom. And so, even though I'm in this job and I mean, it's 365 days a year, but my husband and I make it a priority to do summer missions, during the summers where we can be with students day in and day out, because there's something about the vision of being with them that helps me stay in my current role, because this is why I do what I do. And I think if I ever lose my passion for students and being with students, I probably don't need to be in this role. But that's probably what I miss the most, watching these change lives of these young people as they just become captivated by Christ.
Right. And there's something about being around students that keep you young
Yes.
and churn your passion for the campus.
Mhm. Very much so.
So, well, Shannon, when you think through, because you've had to make some of those decisions of, okay, I'm on a local campus, I'm on the front lines. Now I'm leading other people who are on the front lines, and then now I'm leading others who are leading others who are leading others who are on the front lines. Um, how did you come to the decision, like, oh, now it's time for me to take this role where I'm equipping those on the front lines?
Mhm. Well, definitely God's call, I will say that,
Right.
and even when I was asked to do this role, I was like, "No way." It was just kinda like, I can't do that, and, it's interesting because a passage that the Lord continually I've noticed has used in my life at different times has been the passage in Matthew 14, the feeding of the 5,000. And
Yeah.
part of why I think the Lord has used that is so many times it's like, I can't do this. And it's like, you're right, Shannon, you can't do this, but I can. But what I love about that passage in Matthew 14 is Jesus tells the disciples, you feed them. And they bring their little meager means of 5 loaves and
Yeah.
2 fish, and they give them to Jesus, and Jesus is the one that multiplies them, but then Jesus gives them back, and they are the ones that actually feed the 5,000, and we know it's actually more than 5,000, it was 5,000 men, but women and children, it would be even more. And so you think about Jesus takes our meager and he makes it abundant. And so I think that part of why I feel called to this is part of who God's made me to be, but part of it is I can't do it on my own. But Jesus takes that meager and he makes it abundant. But part of what I love of my role is I love the big vision. Like I love thinking about like how do we get after reaching every student with the gospel. And I don't think that just means Cru. It's what I love about the partnership together of campus ministries. Like there's something powerful of partners coming together and saying, we're going to do this and believe God together because this is the Great Commission. This is God's, it's not ours. And so I think part of it is I really do love really being entrusted with the vision of what he's called us to in reaching students with the gospel and then building them up and then sending them no matter what they do with their lives to do the same.
That's right. You win, build,
Yes,
send.
very much so. It's
Very
ingrained
much
in
so.
me.
That's right. Well, and it's really is beautiful because you mentioned partnership. The Every Campus movement that came out of, and Cru is one of the spearhead founding organizations of that, and it's now blossomed to, I don't know, 85, 86 organizations. But it's this idea of to reach every student on every campus, it's going to take every ministry, every org, every church, every Christian to reach this generation.
Yep, very much
That's
so.
powerful.
Mhm.
So sitting where you sit, um, I mean, you see a lot of what's going on, and one of the beautiful things about Cru is that you guys are in a lot of different places, and you're intentional and consistent about all right, gathering data and hearing from what's going on in the field. What what are some trends that you've seen over the past couple years, 2 or 3 years since COVID? What is God doing on college campus from where you sit, what you're seeing?
Yeah, and this it is like I just saw somebody before I came in to get online with you, and they just said something about the campus ministry, and I just said, "It is such a fun time to be a part of the campus ministry right now." And he's like,
Agreed.
"Really?" I'm like, "Yes." Because there is like I said, I've been in college ministry over 30 years, and I'm watching an openness with this generation that I haven't seen before. And I know sociologists call them the anxious generation, but I actually think, isn't it like God to take our weaknesses and actually when we're weak, he is strong and he actually multiplies that out. Again, going back to the feeding of the 5,000, but I think about the openness that I'm seeing with this generation when they are captivated by Jesus, they make a profound impact for him. And so, and it's not just Cru that's seeing this. It is our different partners, campus ministries, where we're maxing out Bible studies, we're maxing out our weekly meetings, in many places. I think about not just here in the U.S., but even what we're watching overseas because we have partnerships overseas with our national staff with Cru, but we're getting in some of the hardest to reach places with the gospel that have been closed for years, but there's this openness that is happening that you just kind of go, okay, God, you're at work and we don't want to miss this. And so I think that's what I'm watching. It's just students that They want something more, and we know that it's Jesus that they want, but once we introduce them to God, it's like they're all in, and they wanna serve him, and so I just think it's such a great time to be in campus ministry and
Yes,
doing it together, and I mean that amongst our partnerships because that's, God at work, I believe.
I agree. And where we sit with via students being neutral and getting to just kind of set the table for a lot of ministries, we've seen that too. It's just been whether it's church based or campus based, we've done this and we've usually done this, but the response has been so much greater. Just students coming to Christ and baby Christians wanting to be mature and students willing to be sent. Just it's a phenomenal time. It's a phenomenal time that this is the time we get to be the generation that gets to steward this generation through that. It's a high calling
It is.
and terrifying all at the same time.
I know, and I think there are so many challenges in our culture today, but of course there are. Like, it's not gonna be this easy thing, and we have to navigate so many things in our culture, but the openness, the students being receptive to the gospel, that we need to steward that well.
Mhm. And it's really beautiful just because the same thing works that when you came to know Christ, it was a student sharing with a student. I mean, the same thing works in 2024.
Mhm.
And I think the thing that we as the older generation have to remember that God's equipped this generation with everything it needs to reach its generation.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
So, well, Shannon, I'm just grateful we get to spend this time together. I'm very excited for you to be one of our speakers at EDM. So real quickly, and want to be respectful of your time because I know you've got a lot going on. What um, would you just kind of quickly tell us why you're choosing to be a part of EDM and why you think it's important for EDM like things, the gathering of collegiate leaders, why that's important and a value add?
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me and having me join in on EDM 25. And I just think about, again, I think it goes back to even what we were talking about with the partnership, that there's something really powerful when we don't kind of stake our claim, like this is this ministries and this is this ministry, but it's kind of, we're looking to our savior, and we're looking going, okay, this is the great commission that God has called all believers to. And so there's something about coming together and reminding us to lift our eyes to Jesus, in that we are in this great commission together. So I think it's visionary to be a part of it, but I also think it's really practical. Like, there's something when I get with a different leader in different organizations and kind of seeing the trends, or how are you solving this problem? How are you going about this? So there's the vision, but I also think the practical side of it as well, that I think we would benefit from at being in at EDM together, just to renew our calling to the Great Commission and doing that through students. But then practically, how can we be more effective in doing that?
It's wonderful. Well, Shannon, thank you for being on the podcast with us. And friends, thank you guys for serving and loving your students. Just want to encourage you, keep doing what you're doing. Keep making time for students. Keep spending time on campus. Keep sharing the gospel, discipling leaders, and sending them to the nations. And so thank you for your service on campus. I hope wherever you're hearing this and listening, it's a beautiful day on campus and you're seeing God work. So friends, that is the conclusion of our episode Offstage with Shannon Compere. And thank you guys for listening.